Hi, everyone. Welcome and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us virtually today. My name is Hala Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to today's live author reading, Systems at Work. We'll be hearing from a diverse selection of new nonfiction from the press for various audiences. And so, first, we'll be hearing from Irene Sullivan, reading from a study of the U.S. foster care system, Born and Raised to Murder, A Failure of Foster Care, released on June 18th. Zuzana Plesa, reading from the memoir Mama, released October 2nd. And Paula Kerman, reading from the middle grade nonfiction Hooligans, Rebels, and Rabble-Rousers, releasing on October 8th. Or, excuse me, released on October 8th. All three authors' books can be purchased both from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website. That's at atmospherepress.com/books. And I'm actually just going to put the links directly to each book in the chat for you. So definitely check those out. At the end of today's event, we will have time for audience questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or more of our authors, go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. Please do stay muted for the duration of the event, but also feel free to use the chat for any praise and comments you want to share. One last note is that we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. If you have a manuscript of your own, we would love to read it, so submit your work today to books@atmospherepress.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting Irene, Zuzana, and Paula today. We're going to start off with our first reader, who is Irene Sullivan. Irene, a retired Florida Circuit judge, presided over cases involving child abuse, domestic violence, family conflict, and juvenile crimes. She's now appointed as a guardian ad litem to be the voice of the child and make recommendations that are in the child's best interest in divorce and paternity cases. Irene is a graduate of Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism and worked for a few years as a newspaper reporter and magazine editor before attending Stetson University College of Law. For 22 years, she practiced law with a large St. Petersburg firm, and in 1998, Irene was elected as a circuit judge and served for 12 years before retiring and becoming an adjunct professor of juvenile law at Stetson University College of Law until 2022. Irene is the author of Raised by the Courts, One Judge's Insight into Juvenile Justice, Real Stories About the Children in Her Court. She's the co-author of You Can't Raise Children by Text, Better Co-Parenting in a Digital World, written with child psychologist Dr. Lisa Negrini, a guide to improving co-parenting in divorce and paternity situations. Today, we'll be hearing from Irene's latest book, Born and Raised to Murder, A Failure of the Foster Care System, in which Sullivan explores the foster care system that abuses, neglects, and incarcerates children who seem unable to break free from a cycle of crime. Through her singular relationship with an incarcerated young man, she offers a rare insider's view into his background, not as an excuse for his crimes, but as a way to understand how a bright bookworm of a child ended up a killer on death row. Let's now welcome Irene.
Thank you, and thanks to Atmosphere Press for having the three of us on here. We're very appreciative, and thank you for that introduction. I focus on this book on the life of Leo Boatman, who is the foster care child who I believe was the longest incarcerated child in Florida in juvenile prisons and now is on death row. So I'd like to start by reading the author's note to the book and the prologue. And if there's time, maybe the first page of the first chapter. Okay, so I start by saying, indeed, Leo Boatman's life got off to a rough start. Born in a mental hospital to a mother whose mental illness and drug addictions later caused her death, he and his older sister were raised by a loving grandmother. Leo excelled at school, impressing his teachers with love of learning and reading books. He had behavior problems, but they were appropriately addressed by social workers and therapists who work with the family. When Leo's grandmother died, Leo was placed into a foster home run by an experienced married couple who were well-trained in raising boys with family challenges in a caring, therapeutic environment, including nourishing meals, healthy athletic activities, and help with homework. When Leo graduated from high school and aged out of foster care, he received a full college scholarship from the state, as well as a monthly stipend for expenses. Leo's goal was to become a veterinarian, so he got a part-time job at an animal hospital and enrolled at a local college to begin training as a vet tech. Leo's foster parents considered him part of the family who should live with them while he was in college. Leo was grateful and insisted on paying them rent from money he earned from his part-time job. Leo graduated from college with high honors and a full scholarship to the University of Florida's veterinarian school. He lived on campus and worked part-time at a local animal hospital. Grateful for the various forms of support that enabled him to get to this point, Leo wanted to give back. He connected with foster children in the Gainesville area and arranged for them to volunteer at an animal hospital. When Leo graduated from vet school, he applied for and received a grant from the Department of Children and Families to open his own veterinarian practice, which would employ foster children part-time and teach them to care for needy animals. The foster children became known as Leo's Lions, and the program received national attention, including featured on 60 Minutes and the Today Show. Leo met a lovely woman who produced and filmed documentaries. They collaborated on one about Leo's Lions. They married and produced cubs of their own while continuing to run the animal hospital and employ foster children. Tragically, none of this is true. It is all what might have happened, given Leo's very love of learning and glimpses of his care about his fellow man, had the state of Florida not miserably failed him in every aspect of his life. Read on, please, to see how this failure to support the life, welfare, and potential of a needy child predictably, inevitably, and needlessly resulted in the tragic loss of many lives. So the prologue begins January 2006. Towering pine trees, fresh air, needles crunching underfoot, bird song, breeze, bright sunlight. Leo inhaled deeply. So many sensations overwhelmed him. He hadn't felt them for 6 long years. 6 years of prison bars, smelly cells, crap for food, and snarling guards. The guards, the guards, the guards. He couldn't get them out of his head. Camping in the Ocala National Park was a great idea. He'd unrolled his new sleeping bag at the park entrance the night before, slept under the stars, and was the first one in when it opened at sunrise. He was looking forward to the adventure. He carried a week's worth of food and water in his backpack. The rifle slung over his shoulder would bag a squirrel or a rabbit if he ran out. Uncle Vic wouldn't miss the rifle. He followed the compass directions uphill to Hidden Pond. It was beautiful, almost midday now, warm for January. That's when he first saw them, a young couple walking around the pond. The man had his arm around the woman's shoulders. They were laughing. Their tent poked up behind them. Leo decided his voice would be less startling than simply appearing in front of them. Hi there. Looks like you picked a great campsite. I'm going on a ways. I wonder if you could give me directions. They both smiled at him. They weren't afraid. The guards should see me now, he thought. Damn guards, get out of my mind. Leo guessed they were boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe lovers, a few years older than he was. Lucky them. The man told him the way to the next good campsite. Leo climbed halfway up the short hill, sat down, knees bent, and watched them break camp. He could hear them laughing, teasing each other about the work and the breakfast. He was 19 and had never laughed easily with any girl or woman. He'd never even had a relationship. He'd been locked up since he was 13. Just guards, guards, guards. Damn fucking foul-mouthed, mean, and cruel guards. Get the hell out of this forest. Get out of my mind, guards. Get out of my body. You're making me so goddamn mad, I don't know what I will do. Leo unshouldered his rifle and took aim. first at the tall pine, then at a scurrying squirrel, and then at the campers. He steadied the rifle on his right knee. He was so angry. He wished he had a guard to kill, all of them. Here are just campers. He pointed the rifle at the kneeling, smiling man. As the man stood up, Leo pulled the trigger. The gunshot broke the silence, and the man fell to the ground. The girl screamed. Leo aimed again and took her out too. Now, if I've used my time, I'll defer to the next speaker. I could go on a little bit.
Yeah, you've definitely got some time, another
Okay,
8
I'll just
minutes.
start with
So
chapter one then. This is
great.
chapter one called My Birth, July 20th, 1986. Men and drugs, drugs and men. That's all your mother thinks about, my grandmother Lucille would tell my sister Rosie and me after throwing my mother and her current boyfriend out of the house again. About my father, she was more evasive. Don't ask about him, she'd say, or I don't want to talk about him. As I got older, she'd say, your mother doesn't even know who he is. How would I know? I never asked my mother during the time she lived with us. I guess I was too embarrassed, even at an early age, or maybe I was afraid of the answer. I knew who Rosie's father was. I'd seen pictures of him. He was from Sri Lanka, which explained her darker skin. I hated Rosie then for having pictures of her father. I pestered my mother's younger brother, Vic, about my father so often that he finally made my grandmother tell me. Sheila quit high school and was constantly running away from home. I got sick of filling missing persons reports, but I always did. She'd find a man somewhere, live with him a while until he hit her or threw her out, and then she'd come dragging home again and again. Well, one day after she'd been gone for months, we got a call from a mental hospital in Arcadia, Florida, about 3 hours away. Wouldn't you know that Sheila got herself admitted there sometime before and didn't tell us? The reason they called us was she'd gotten herself pregnant while there, and they wanted to know what to do about the baby, about you. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Irene, especially for starting the painting the picture for us so we can start to understand. But definitely, I'm putting that link to the book one more time in the chat, so everyone be sure to check that out. And for now, reading next is Zuzana Plesa. Zuzana, a Zurich-trained Jungian analyst and counselor, brings her extensive experience in navigating the complexities of mother-daughter relationships to her writing. Her work reflects a deep conviction that resolving these issues is fundamental to a woman's healthy development. When she isn't empowering women through writing or counseling active duty members and their families, Susanna finds solace in the tranquility of gardening, reading, and swimming in beautiful Niceville, Florida. In Mama, the memoir we'll be hearing from today, Susanna delves into the intricate tapestry of the mother daughter bond, grappling with the resentment and anger she harbored towards her own mother. Instead of severing ties, Susanna embarks on a journey of understanding, exploring her mother's past and the influences that shaped her. Through Jungian analysis, reading, and journaling, Susanna learns to nurture the mother within herself. Susanna, take it away.
Thank you very much. I will pronounce the title of my book Mama because that's the way we say it in Slovak, but everybody else can say it in the American way, which is Mama. Um, I'd like all of you to think of your relationship with your mother. I focus on the mother-daughter, but there are also issues with son-mother relationships. So whether you're male or female, see if you can focus on your relationship with your mother. My first chapter is entitled Death. I'm going to read part of that. And then, if there is time, a little bit on the end part where I talk about the specifically mother daughter relationship. On January 4th, 2001, the telephone rang at midnight to inform me that my mother, Anna, had died. It was not a surprise, but hearing about her death was not easy. I was the assistant principal at Mahan American High School on base in Iceland and had just returned from visiting my mother in Massachusetts at the nursing home. Now I had to make arrangements to fly back to the States. I waited until morning to inform my principal that I had to go on emergency leave to my mother's funeral. I went to the airport and boarded the first plane that was going to the States. I flew to Baltimore, Maryland, and then took the train to New York City. My sister took the train from Massachusetts, and we met at the funeral parlor, which was located in Manhattan. We talked about with the funeral director regarding the funeral arrangements and the burial at Linden Hill Cemetery in Brooklyn. The funeral home was run by a Slovak family, and near it used to be a Slovak restaurant where we had my father's post-funeral brunch. My mother really enjoyed the Slovak restaurant's decor and food. Both my mother and father had birthday celebrations there. They even played Slovak music. The Slovak restaurant was no longer in operation because most of the Slovaks had moved out of the area. We were so disappointed. We went to a nearby German restaurant and booked it for the post-funeral lunch. I was so thankful that I could make the arrangements with my sister because I was grieving my mother's death and was not in a state to make good decisions. Having my sister by my side was a gift to me. My sister Betty explained the events preceding and following my mother's death. She was visiting my mother on the evening of January 4th at the nursing home. She said good night and returned home. After a few minutes, the phone rang. The nurse called and said, "I'm sorry to inform you that your mother just passed away." Through tears, my sister replied, "I just left, and she seemed okay. And now you're telling me that she died?" I'm shocked. The nurse replied, "I'm sorry for your loss. Please come back to the nursing home and we will help you make the arrangement for your mother's body." My sister, her spouse, and my nephew drove to the nursing home to make the arrangements to fly my mother's body to New York City. The church where she was married was where the funeral was held. She had lived in New York until she came to live with me in Germany before I moved to Iceland. We have a family plot in Brooklyn, New York, where my grandmother, great-grandmother, and father are buried. My mother wanted to be buried with my father, so her wish was granted. I used to go to the cemetery with my mother to visit the family graves. We planted flowers there and made the graves look attractive so the dead would lie in beauty. At her wake, several of her friends and cousins were in attendance. There were quite a few people at the wake, many of whom I had not seen in years. It was good to see old friends and family. They expressed their sympathy for our loss, and I was grateful that they came to the wake to share our loss. I wrote the following for my mother on the plane from Iceland and read it at the wake. Dear Mama, now that you have left your earthly home, we must rely on the memories to sustain us. Thank you for all the stories you read to me about the birds, bees, and trees, and for the pictures you drew for me. It wasn't until later in life that I began to appreciate your artistic talent. Thank you for my sister who became our bundle of joy. I remember all the salads you made and how delicately and precisely you cut each vegetable you placed in the mixture. Thank you for all the crocheted hats, shawls, and gloves that your hands created. They served me well in Iceland. You shared 6 years with me in Stuttgart, Germany, and we laughed a lot. Thank you for reading all the signs as we traveled to Verbovce, Slovakia, the land of our ancestors. Your strength to endure the difficult and incomprehensible happenings in your life provides a model for the daughters who now have the task to continue your values and carry out your mission of service to others. As you leave your earthly home, may your spirits unite with the spirit of your Creator in eternal peace. Rest assured that you will be remembered lovingly by your daughters. After the reading, I sat down with sadness, but also with satisfaction that I could find parting words to share with and about Mama. With her gray hair combed in a short bob, the natural beauty of her face could be seen. The blue blouse and skirt that my sister had selected for her gave her a modern fashion appearance. Her blue shoes matched her outfit. She could have been ready for a fashion show. My mother liked to dress up and look fashionable, so in the casket she looked as if she were ready for Sunday morning church service. The only item that was missing was a hat. My mother never attended church without a hat. Maybe she wasn't really ready to die, but instead ready for church. Are we ever ready to die and go into the unknown? The funeral was the next day at Holy Trinity Slovak Lutheran Church, which was our ancestral church. It's located in Lower Manhattan on East 20th Street. I looked around the church and my heart sank. There were only a few family members at the funeral since most of my mother's family had died before her, including her two younger sisters. It was just me and my sister's immediate family. We are a small family, so it is natural to have few family members at the funeral. My mother had one grandson who was 24 at the time and one granddaughter who was 22. They were both in attendance. The cousins who attended were from my father's side of the family. My cousin Olga and her husband Don attended, as well as my cousin Paul. Paul and Olga were the children of my father's older brother. Olga was one of my favorite cousins because she always made my mother and me feel like part of the family. I should have been happy with the people who were there, but I wasn't. Where were all the people she had befriended? I was disappointed to see so few so-called friends at the funeral. She deserved better. I thought, this is the way it's going to be for me too. She had done so much for so many people, and yet none of them were at the funeral. People forget who you are once you cannot serve their purposes. I hope she found her peace in death and resurrection. I wish I had known my mother better, and I wish she had known me better. What were her hopes, dreams, and disappointments? What goals was I to carry on since she did not achieve them? Understand, forgive, and love are three key words that help me pave a new relationship with Mama. Do I still have time?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I want to go to what is toward the end, the mother-daughter relationship. And if I run over, just give me the finger to stop. Okay, my mother's death led me to ponder the mother-daughter relationship in general. The mother-daughter relationship is very important to the development of a healthy child. A daughter needs a sense of support, warmth, and acceptance from her mother. The young girl can then face the world with a greater sense of security and self-esteem. A young girl learns to become a young woman by the example she experiences from her mother as a model. If the mother dies early or has physical and emotional problems, the young girl needs to find other sources of mothering. It could be a grandmother, aunt, older sister, teacher, or friend. In the fairy tale Cinderella, the main character has lost her mother to death. She continues to honor her mother by taking a twig to her grave. Unfortunately, the stepmother is not kind to her, but the birds, bees, and godmother step in to take care of her and help her through her difficult times. This is a story of healing. Her helpers remind me of the ram God provided for Abraham so he would not have to sacrifice his son Isaac. Life always seems to provide some positive intervention. If the mother is too good and too protective, then the daughter has a difficult time in the world. The world has evil people in it, and when a daughter has experienced only goodness and kindness, then the evil in the world is a great shock. The daughter has a greater struggle to deal with the evil people and happenings that she encounters in the world. Some difficulties with her mother can be an asset in coping in a world that has evil in it. A mother's acceptance of her body can also give a daughter a positive image of her body. Acceptance of the body also leads to a sense of self-confidence in the daughter. Emotional acceptance and physical comfort are important in the mother-daughter relationship. Reasonable expectations and positive reinforcement are needed by children. As Dr. Jung states in Reflections on the Life and Dreams of C.G. Jung by Analia Yaffe, if I did not respond fully to my life's purpose and challenges, then they would be inherited by my children, who would have to bear the burden of my unlived life, in addition to their own difficulties. I think a heavy burden was passed on to me by my mother. After I had processed all the hurtful memories, I cannot continue to blame my mother. Behind the personal mother is the ordering and regulating of the archetypes. If the mother-daughter relationship is disturbed, for whatever reason, the negative mother is constellated. As adults, we need to take a look at images and the corresponding archetypes. Effects of being raised by a toxic mother may include higher risk for anxiety and depression. If anxiety and depression are present, it's important to work with a therapist and start looking inward through journaling. Recording and pondering dreams is also helpful and insightful. Dr. Catherine Asper states, maternal deprivation, for whatever reason it occurs, is equivalent to the loss of the child's basic sense of herself and inflicts a wound that is difficult to heal. Some mothers, because of their own deprivations, are not able to give their daughters what they need to grow into healthy human beings. The daughter then has to learn to mother herself through self-care, whatever that may be. It is important for the daughters to seek help so she doesn't repeat the inadequate mothering she received. She can then correct the inadequate mothering she received and do a better job with her own children or other children who look to her for mothering. Is there still time?
Yes, you got a few minutes.
A few minutes. Well, stop me because I have about 2 more pages to this. Okay. When we study fairy tales, we are accessing the wisdom of the ages. Why not use what was given to us? In her book, Interpretation of Fairy Tales, Marie-Louise Valcron states fairy tales are the purest and simplest expression of collective unconscious psychic processes. Here is where the therapist can help the daughter uncover what is going on in the unconscious regarding the mother-daughter relationship. The Goose Girl is a good example of a destructive mother who allows her daughter to go to a strange land and with a wicked servant. The therapist can assist the daughter to see her destructive mother and help her deal with specific situation constructively. Therapists who work with daughters of difficult mother-daughter relationships can gain insights from fairy tales, and another one that comes to mind is Snow White. Reading the fairy tale of Snow White and allowing the insights gained to come to the conscious level can be a real help in the healing process. The 7 ravens and the 6 swans teach us that healing a negative mother complex takes time and perseverance. The daughter may be assisted by an animus prince, an image of the unconscious. By responding to the turmoil of the mother complex, one can embrace the task of finding the mother within. With work, the daughter can discover a meaningful and fulfilling life for herself. A fulfilled woman is a good mother for her children and other children who cross her path. Okay, I think I'll stop there so that we have time for the next person.
Well, thank you so much, Susanna, and for giving us so much of that story. I think there's a lot to kind of dive into there, and I think that's kind of what sets this memoir apart from others. So thank you so much for that reading. Our final reader for today is Paula Kerman. Paula grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, but has made Des Moines, Iowa her home since attending college at Drake University, where she completed a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. She also has a master's in education and was an art educator for 43 years in the Des Moines Public Schools, at the Des Moines Art Center, and at her in-home studio. She's passionate about her art practice and has exhibited and sold her work. After experiencing significant loss, she began researching and painting strong women who inspired her. Hooligans, Rebels, and Rabble-Rousers is her first book, and it's a middle grade for young readers in your lives that tells the true stories of 20 girls who defied the odds and left an indelible mark on history. Through captivating narratives and accompanied art pieces, readers will discover the childhood experiences that molded these extraordinary women into strong, fearless individuals. From Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who challenged gender stereotypes, to Malala Yousafzai, who bravely advocated for girls' education, and Aretha Franklin, whose soulful voice became an anthem for civil rights and women's movements. We'll hear more now from this book from Paula herself. Oh, Paula, I think you're still muted.
Okay. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, I'm going to start with Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin, the scientist who thought in pictures. Temple was an unusual baby. When her young mother Eustacia tried to hug her, she didn't like it. She acted wild and clawed at her mom. She would flap her hands and make peeping sounds. She broke her toys and tore wallpaper off the walls. She chewed puzzle pieces and spit them out. Then other days she would be fine. Her mom worried that it was her fault. It wasn't. Doctors suggested she live in a hospital for children with mental problems. Her father agreed. Her mom wasn't having it. In the 1940s, not much was known about her condition. It is called autism. It affects the way a person acts. Some never learn to speak and are in their own world. Others grow up to lead happy, successful lives, though they may be unusual. When she was 3, her mom took her to a special brain doctor called a neurologist. The tests he did on her showed she was extremely smart. Temple went to speech therapy and learned to talk. By age 5, she turned into a chatterbox and wouldn't stop. I have a nephew like that who is autistic and he never stops talking. Kids with autism are often very sensitive to loud noises, bright lights, strong smells, and rough fabrics. When these things become too much, that is when a tantrum happens. Temple so wanted to fit in, and when she didn't, would sometimes have a meltdown. She flinched at the slightest touch, but secretly wanted to be hugged. Imagine what that would feel like. As a child, Temple was a good artist and could invent and build things herself. She explained that she thought in pictures. She would picture something in her mind, draw it, and build it. Temple said, art was always encouraged in our home. Art was what saved me. Because of her autism, Temple had a hard time knowing how to be social. In middle school, she was bullied. She acted differently than the other kids. Loud sounds like the school bell scared her. She repeated things over and over loudly. Now that the kids she knew were older, they cared more about things like clothes, boys, and music. Temple didn't care about these things. She also didn't understand jokes or sarcasm, like, yeah, right, when you really mean not a chance. The insults and name-calling were too much. Talk about mean girls. Temple threw a book at one of the name-callers. The principal expelled her. Temple's mom found a small country school where Temple would live during high school. It had horses and a farm. She spent all of her free time in the stables. She became an excellent rider and could calm even the wildest horse. She made friends, but still didn't understand why they cared about hair and makeup. But as she became a young woman and her body changed, she began having panic attacks. How could she make them stop? At age 15, on her aunt's ranch in Arizona, she discovered her answer. She watched the cows getting their shots from the vet. They went into a chute where the sides pressed in on their bodies. This calmed them down. Could this be how hugs worked? Temple tried it and it felt relaxing. She built a hug machine and used it whenever a panic attack came. She went on to college and got her PhD. Temple used her skills and compassion to help animals and others with autism. She knew what it was like to have anxiety and understood how the cattle felt. She helped farm animals to be treated in a gentler way. The girl who didn't speak as a child went on to be a speaker all over the world. She is now a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. By the way, when her hug machine broke, she realized what she really wanted was a hug from her mom. In her words, I'm into hugging people now. My book works probably differently than yours does. So this would be the next page for kids. In the background, you'll see my painting of Temple Grandin there. What I ask the kids to do is, I have a section called Look at the Painting. And so I try to engage the kids with the painting. This particular one says, in my painting, I have included words from Temple herself. What do you think they mean? Do you think being different is good or bad? Have you ever felt different? So it prompts kids to think about their own lives and ways that they might be like Temple or different from Temple, or any of the women that I write about. I'm going to read Simone Biles. Simone Biles, the most talented gymnast of all time. And I wrote this before her latest wins, but not like she hasn't had a whole bunch of them. the most talented gymnast of all time, born 1997 in Columbus, Ohio. Small but mighty, a tiny powerhouse, daredevil. These are just a few of the words that describe her. Despite being only 4'8" Simone Biles is considered one of the greatest athletes in history. She is known and admired throughout the world, but things were not always this wonderful. Her parents struggled with drug and alcohol addiction, and her father abandoned the family when Simone was 3 years old. She and her little sister Adria were put into foster care. Her mom's dad and his second wife adopted them, and another aunt adopted the two older siblings. They gave the girls the security of a safe home in Texas. Simone considers them her parents. Adria called Simone fearless. When she was very young, Simone would jump off a second-floor railing onto a sofa 1 floor below. She also taught herself to flip backwards off of mailboxes. Okay, readers, do not try this at home. Simone discovered gymnastics at age 6 on a daycare field trip. She began imitating the moves. The instructor encouraged her parents to enroll her in gymnastics. She started training with Coach Amy Borman at age 8. Simone had boundless energy that made her such a good athlete. But at school, it was difficult for her to sit still and learn. Her doctors prescribed Ritalin for her ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This helped her to focus at school and gymnastics. Simone later said, "My challenge is also my superpower, ADHD." At age 14, Simone had to make a difficult decision. She decided to leave her public school to be homeschooled so she could compete as a gymnast. This meant she gave up a lot of fun activities. She began competing and was doing very well until she lost control on the balance beam and fell in 2013. She went to a sports psychologist and learned how to stop worrying about what others expected. By age 16, she had won 2 gold medals. She went on to begin an amazing winning streak. But in 2016, Russian hackers discovered that Simone had ADHD and took Ritalin. It is a banned substance for athletes, but Simone has permission to take it. She sent out a message on Twitter that taking meds for ADHD is nothing to be ashamed of. She encouraged other girls to use your voice. Courage is your superpower. Not only was Simone talented, she was also tough. After spending the night in the ER with a painful kidney stone, she helped lead Team USA to first place in the World Artistic Gymnastics Championships the next day. Simone isn't only about work, though. She orders pepperoni pizza after every meet. She also is crazy about her 2 dogs, Lilo and Rambo. She says they help her cope with pressure. To inspire other girls to be confident, she started a line of clothing for Athleta. She says there are hidden notes in every piece of clothing. I want kids to feel comfortable and confident in not only what they wear, but also in their own skin. Her favorite color is yellow, and she's afraid of bees. Hey, she's human. There's another way we know Super Simone is human. At the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, she was so stressed out that she decided to leave the Olympics and take care of her mental health. She spoke out about taking a break when you need it and to not be ashamed of that. She is not only a champion gymnast, but a champion for mental health too. And you can kind of see Simone in the back over my left shoulder. And my quote from her is, "Courage is your superpower, use your voice." And again, I encourage the kids to look at the painting and look for symbols and quotes in the painting. I don't know if I have more time or not.
Yeah, you've got a few minutes if you'd like to keep reading.
Okay, I'll read a little short one. I'll read from my first one, Lozen, because not many people know about Lozen. Lozen, Apache warrior and healer, born 1840 in Apacheria, New Mexico, died 1889 in Mount Vernon, Alabama. Lozen was born in an area called Apacheria, which was Arizona, New Mexico, and part of Mexico. Later, it was called New Mexico. She spent most of her time with her older brother, Victorio, who was an important Apache chief. She learned to ride a horse at age 7. It was a brutal time for the Apaches with enemies on all sides. Mexico was paying for Apache scalps, and the Americans were trying to take their land and food and kill their people. Lozin showed many abilities that were unusual for her age. While other girls were in charge of the home and community, Lozin learned how to use a spear, bow, and rifle. She was determined to help her people. She also exhibited special powers. At her coming of age ceremony around age 12, Lozin saw a vision of herself as a healer or medicine woman. She studied herbs and minerals and used them to heal wounds. She also discovered a special power to predict where the enemy was coming from. She got up at sunrise, face to the sun. She turned in circles with her arms held out until her hands tingled. Her palms would turn purple if the enemy was approaching. She was a valuable help to her tribe because of this. She helped them avoid capture in this way and became a legend among her people. Many men of her tribe wanted to marry her, but Lozin was not interested. She was too busy. When soldiers were after her people, she led women and children across a raging Rio Grande to safety. Once they were safe on the other side, she rode back across the river to continue fighting the enemy. She could ride, shoot, and fight like a man, her brother said. Lozin is my right hand. Lozin escorted a woman and her newborn across the desert of Mexico. She had only a rifle, cartridge belt, knife, and a 3-day supply of food. Through raining gunfire, she delivered them to the reservation. After her brother Victorio was killed in battle, Lozin joined forces with the famous Apache war chief Geronimo. They tried to negotiate a peace treaty. The Americans did not take them seriously. Finally, the Apaches laid down their weapons and surrendered. Geronimo, Lozin, and others were sent by train to a swampy prisoner camp in Florida. She was later transferred to another prison in Alabama. She caught tuberculosis and died there as a prisoner. Brave Lozin is an inspiration to all girls and women. She was not afraid to be different from the other girls. She is a true rebel and hero. And I sold many of my paintings before COVID, and a Lozin was sold, but this is a picture of Lozin. No.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Paula, for giving those insights into a few of the women in your book. And I know there's so many more to learn about and to explore, especially with those younger readers in everyone's life. So I've put that link also for your book in the chat too. At this time, we do have some time for our audience Q&A. So if you have a question for one or more of our authors, please go ahead and type those in the chat and I'll make sure they get asked. Already we have a question for all 3 authors. This question is, what is an important message you want your readers to learn after reading your book? I'm thinking we could go in reading order. So Irene, do you want to start us off with this one?
Yes, boiled down to a few words, it's that adults should listen to kids. Listen to them when they have something to say, when they're complaining, when there's more than one of them. Listen to them. That was the failure of the adults in my book.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so easy to take for granted. You just listen to what an adult says and a child's opinion doesn't matter, but it's so important. And I mean, like you said, it's got these huge consequences when we don't. Zuzana, what about you? What's an important message you would like readers to take away from your book?
The importance of examining the mother-daughter relationship or the son-mother relationship. It's essential. One of the things, the highest compliments I heard from a reader was it made her think more carefully about her relationship with her mother and to approach it differently. Fortunately, her mother is still alive. But even if the mother is not alive, one can journal and one can imagine and one can image what it is in that relationship that maybe needs to be resolved.
Yeah, definitely. That introspection and that piece of the process is so critical. And also, Paula, what about you? What's an important message you'd like readers to take away from your book? Oh, sorry. I think you're muted again, Paula.
Gosh, I'm sorry. Because I was a teacher for so long, I know that kids go through an amazing amount of really, really tough stuff. Um, and I just want kids to take away from this book that no matter what they've gone through, they can rise above it and go on to do really important and amazing and world-changing things.
Absolutely. And it's another thing. I think just so many kids really need that. So I think that's really beautiful. We have another question. This is for you again, Paula. What is your artistic process when it comes to painting, and how did that feed into your writing process?
Oh, okay. I actually I'm an artist. This is the first book I've ever written. So, um, my artistic process, I've done all kinds of different art, but this particular art is mixed media. And I started it, I lost my husband in 2016, my mom in March, my husband in April, and my dad at the beginning of June. And then both of my in-laws that same year. So lots of losses. And I started researching strong women because I felt like I need something to get me through this, all this grief. And I was interested in trying new things, and I decided to approach it in a different way and use mixed media. So I typically I sketch first, and then I begin laying in the layers of paint. Sometimes I'll do painted paper and then rip it and tear it. Sometimes I'll tear things from magazines if I find something. I always include quotes from the woman. Um, and so for a while I was just doing the paintings and I was doing art shows and I was selling my work. And then COVID hit, all the art shows were canceled, but I was kind of hooked on doing it. So I kept doing it. And then I lost my fiance to cancer a few years ago. And at that point, I just decided I wanted to take this body of work and do something good with it. And that's why I decided to write this book for kids. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's quite the story, right? And it's almost unbelievable. And to see that this has come out of it, I think is really um it's just so it's it's just so touching to see that. So thank you again for sharing this with us. This question next that is for Irene. From all your experience in the legal field, how did you know this was the case you needed to write more deeply about?
Well, that's a good question. When you're a juvenile judge and sitting on the bench and you see kids coming before you all the time, some of them abused, abandoned, and neglected, some of them foster kids, some of them delinquents, uh, committing small crimes and then larger crimes, you always want to know why. Why is this kid out late at night? Why is this kid taking drugs? Why is this kid so threatening to other people? So there's a curiosity that comes from being a juvenile judge. And this guy, Leo Boatman, had all of the factors that made me curious when I first was introduced to him. And so I became his pen pal, wrote to him, visited him sometimes, and wanted to know what in his life had given him, brought him to the point where he could murder these two nice college kids in the Ocala National Forest. It was curiosity.
Yeah, as so many texts are born from, I would say. So, another question, this one is for Zuzana. What has been the response to your book from people who are in your life?
Well, one word would be positive, and it's encouraging them to look at their mother-daughter relationship. However, I also still work actively as a therapist, and a lot of my clients have mother relationship problems. And they like the idea that they can look at it in a different light instead of ignoring mother or hating her. One thing that I didn't read about, but I do mention in the book, is many immigrant children or children with immigrant mothers, particularly from South America, find it very difficult to have a relationship with their mother. They don't feel approved, that mother wants things to be done so that they look good in America. So this has been helpful to them to look at as well. And I felt that in order for myself to relate to these people that I counsel, that I really needed to look at my own relationship with my mother, who was and wasn't an immigrant. I mean, she was born in the States, but she was taken to a foreign country. So I sort of understood. And being a firstborn, as many of my clients are, the burden put on them to grow up and be the parent in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. And it's again, it's something that so many people relate to in vastly different ways. But I am glad to hear that, there's this largely positive response. So that's good. Um, we've got one more question. This is for all three authors. What is next for you as writers? Paula, do you want to start us off with this one?
I'm not sure. This is very new to me, and the thing with my kind of book is that it takes a long time for me to do each painting. So I would have to get another body of work. Um, and I don't whip it out really quick. I take my time on each painting. So I have to think long and hard about um, what I would do. People have said, we want you to write another book. We want you to do more. So I'll have to just see how I can accomplish that.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what develops, especially since it maybe is kind of nebulous right now. So it could be any number of things. Susanna, what about you? What's next for you as a writer?
Well, I'm at a point where I have to give a lecture in February on the use of fairy tales in Jungian analysis. And it is a big part of our therapy. So that's consuming a lot of my time. I'm actually interpreting Snow White, which was always my favorite tale. And I think after that, I'm going to try. I have been writing a long, long time, but I'm not publishing stuff, to gather what all of my writings from the many years and see if they have a theme or something that I can pull together.
Absolutely. So definitely something to look forward to. And Irene, closing us out, what is next for you as a writer?
Well, I want to try fiction, and I have an idea for a judge who has some disciplinary problems of his own, who gets involved with a rogue foster home, and things develop between them.
Mhm.
So I want to explore that and from my background, but make it fiction.
Mm.
Absolutely. I love that idea of kind of allowing that experience to inform this fictional narrative. Um, So lots of good things to be on the lookout for. But for now, I just want to say that it was so wonderful to hear all three of your books come to life in the voices of their creators. So thank you so much to Irene, Susanna, and Paula for your generosity with your time and your words, your thoughts in this Q&A. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being here with us as well to celebrate these wonderful authors together. Don't forget that you can order Born and Raised to Murder, Mama, and Hooligans, Rebels, and Rabble-Rousers from the links in the chat. And I'll actually put those in there just one more time for everybody so you can check those out. And please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, sign up for our email newsletter, or submit a book manuscript of your own. You can submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and just let us know that you attended today's event. We'll look forward to hearing from you, but until then, that's it. So have a great rest of your week and a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you.